What's up, guys? Welcome back. It's Dave. I'm going to handicap a race here for Penn National tomorrow, 7:31, and I'm going to do it for a couple reasons. One, I was going to handicap it anyway. I was going to look at it. I figured I would do it, put it on video, simply because I have had some questions lately through email, clarifications as far as some standards, what to use for standards, first call, second call at routes. Routes, sprints, and so forth. And also, I wanted to clear up something that I also got through email. A couple things, actually. One of them is somebody had ordered pace progression tutorial, the digital tutorial, and they asked for a refund. And the reason they asked for the refund was they said they thought this was a software program that did the work for you. Now, I didn't think I had to really go over this. I thought simply watching these videos, you guys could see that the manual work that I do, the inputting I put in of the factors, that it's obviously not a standalone software program that just download the file, hit a button, and it does it for you. Okay? In a perfect world, that would be great. Okay? But it's not a standalone program. Secondly, if it was a standalone program, you wouldn't get it for $36. So if you want to stand, and I granted the refund, I was fine with that. But at the same time, now this individual still has the tutorial, which is fine. I'm not concerned about that, but I do want to make sure that nobody else makes that mistake, thinking that this is a program opposed to just a model that you have to still do some work in. Now, with that being said, a second part of the email, his email was, also, I thought it gave you picks. And again, you guys have seen many videos that I'm actually putting my own picks up here based on what I see in the grid. I, for one, have had experience in the past with black box models that just give you the picks, and they're not that good. Okay? I think your own mind, when it comes to analyzing what you do and coming up with your picks, is always going to be better than just something that you're paying for that's going to give you picks and you don't even know why. It's just giving you picks. Okay? Now, with that said, I'm going to... another email I got was about the race shape that we've been talking about the last two videos, as far as being a little more disciplined as far as what races we choose based on the race shape. And if there's anything that's extremely fast or extremely slow, if you can, to pass that race by and don't use it as one of your pace lines. And the question in the email was, how relevant is that when that particular factor is only being used in one of the ratings? And that's not true. Okay, the first early A is simply the raw fractions converted to ratings. Okay, so no, the race shape is not used in early A. Early B, however, is now the raw fractions and now tying in the actual shape of the race. So it's being used in column B. All right, early B, pace progression rating number 2 is using the race shape. Okay, E3 is also using the race shape. E3 is taking this particular factor now and tying in the... Oh, I was pointing in the wrong columns. Over here is the race shape. Excuse me. EC is also now taking this factor that took into account the race shape and now tying in the Briz pace figures as well. So as you can see, it's used in 1, 2, and now when we get over here and we have our summative ratings, and as you can see, the grids I'm using right now do not have the class adjustment, and not for any particular reason. I just do it because it shaves a little bit of time off of my handicapping. But the early late takes into account the EC and the turn into finish. So as you can see, that's 3 columns now that the race shape is actually impacting. And the reason I use this column in the early late and not the other ones is because this is the column that's tying in all of the data that corresponds to the early part of the race. Instead of just using this here where we're just looking at fractions, or this here where we're just looking at race shape and fractions, we're using EC because it looks at race shape, Briz pace, and our own ratings for the raw fractions. And then we're tying that in with the turn finish. And then the overall is looking at the target ratings. It's looking at the, let me look at the formula real fast. The two target ratings averaged together because this is a double pace line grid. It's looking at the early late. And it's also looking at the, once again, the EC. So right there, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 factors or 4 ratings that are affected by the race shape. So that's why I feel the race shape is relevant. If it was just one category and it only affected one rating, yeah, you maybe you take that rating with a grain of salt, and you don't be as disciplined in choosing your pace lines when it comes to the race shape. Okay, so those are the things I wanted to discuss based on the emails I've gotten. Okay, now moving on to handicapping. This is Penn National Race 1 for tomorrow, 7:31. So I'm going to split the screen here, and we're looking at the race right now. And what I'm hoping, I haven't even looked at any runners now. What I'm hoping is I'm hoping that we come up with what I call the oddball horse or horses, which don't necessarily fit today's distance, and you have to do a little bit of searching as far as what pace line you want to use and what you want to do with that distance. So here we look, I see we have a mile here to use. Okay, this is a mile on the dirt, and we also have a mile back here to use. But let's look at our first pace line. Our first pace line we're going to use, I'm actually going to go 3 down, okay, because actually I'm not going to go 3 down, again, because this is December 23rd. So this is an oddball horse. We're looking at one race in 2024 this year. It was in July, this month, but it was at 6 furlongs. But what I'd like to do to justify, at least to myself, that we're getting an accurate comparison here is the fact that for the first call, we use a 22. And on the second call, which is more important, which is the pace call of the race, we use a 44 in a sprint. Okay? So 44, let me convert that to a rating, sorry. A 23 would be a 95, and the 46 would be a 90. So I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of how I'm doing this. That's what the tutorial does, and the book explains. So I'm just going to put the figures down. Whereas if this were a route race, we're using a 46 as our standard, that would actually be 100. So that would be actually 10 points higher than it is now because of the fact that we're using a 44 as our standard. Okay, so that's the most important early call of the race. The second call, that's the pace call. I'm not necessarily concerned that we're only using 22. We don't use the first quarter in a route race anyway. Okay, and as we go down here to the mile race, which I'm probably going to use as my second pace line, you'll see. So now we have an E1 pace of an 88 and an 89. And we have a 1C, 2C, and we are at the mercy of this right here, this -9 total, because, again, I don't want to. I want one of my pace lines to be a recent race, and this is the only one we have to work with. So this is a -4, -5, and then we have our target rating. Our target rating is going to be off of a 108. So we have a 110 and 3, which is 87. And this is the actual horse's fractions. I have the PP generator set, so I don't have to worry about any links behind or anything. And this horse was in the lead anyway, so that reflects this horse's actual time. So this target rating here would be an 87. And then when I go to the final fraction, I'm just going to do my math. 14 to a minute, 24 and 3. Off of a 22 is also an 87. And then the late pace was an 85. So there's my data from the sprint pace line from this race. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to use one of these route pace lines as my second pace line. Now, what I want to do, since I had my hands tied and I had to use a -9 total, I want to find something that's very similar. I see a mile race right here that was at a positive 11, okay? And it was run well early. This horse does its best running early anyway. It's an E8. So I'm going to use that race as my second pace line. So when I go here to the first call of a route is the halftime. The second, I'm sorry, the first call is the half mile. I'm sorry, it's 46. I'm using. So the 47-1 would be a 94. The E2 now, off of a mile, we use a 110. Where we used a 108 off of a sprint, we're using a 110. So as you can see, I'm justifying it, at least to myself, that we are by using different numbers and not using a 108. Now, if I would have used a 108, we would have been looking at a 77. But since we're using a 110, we're looking at an 87 E2. Now, when I go here, I got an 87, 85. And then we have a 5 and a 6 for our race shape. Our target rating here, watch what I do. Being that target ratings are done off of the finish and not the what do you call it, the 3/4 call here, unless it's a 6 furlong race, then we want to worry about the 3/4 call. We're using a 110, so that's 10, 12, 13, -6. Okay, so that's another 6. That's 19. So we have an 81 for a target rating for this particular horse. Again, 112 and 3. If this were a 6 furlong race, well, if it was a 6 furlong race, we'd use a 108 as our standard. That'd be a 77. But let's say this horse finished first. We wouldn't make any more adjustments to it. 10, 11, 12, 13. That would be an 87. But we got to account for this 6 lengths off, because we don't take our target rating off of the finish. If we took our target rating off of the finish, and let's say we had a standard of a 135 for a mile, then we could do our math. We don't have to worry about that because that time is reflecting this particular horse because of my PP generator settings. But this here is reflecting the time at the 3/4. 112 and 3, 3/4. Now we have to adjust for the 6 lengths off. Now let's go to horse number 2. See what we're looking at here. All right, we're looking at 3 races. I'm not going to use the 7.5. We're going to go to one of these 2. And we're going to go 2 back, and I will use the second race back, mile 70. And we have, off of a 46, we have an 87. Off of a 114 and 1 off of a 110 is a 79. Then we have an 84, 87. Here, again, E1, E2. And our race shape here was a 1 and a 9. Our target rating, off of a 110. And again, remember we have to, off of the finish, we have to take into account this 5 1/4, which is we're gonna bring this down to 5. This is off of a 110 is 21 plus 5 is 26. This is a 74 target rating, and I got to go back and do the final fraction up here, which I'll do in a second. And then for a dirt race, and you guys can jot down notes here if you want. For a dirt race at a mile 70, I use a 26 flat. as my standard. Okay, so when we do the math here, a 114 and 1 to a 146 is actually a 32 and 1 difference. So off of a 26, a 32 and 1 would be 32. That'd be a 68 for final fraction and a 76 for late pace rating. Now let's go back here. I use this mile here. Okay, a 112 and 3 to a 140 and 4 is a 28 and 1. Now the other thing that helps even things out, comparing a route to the sprint, is for the final fraction in the sprint, we use the 22 as our standard. In the route on dirt, I'm going to use the 23 instead of 22. So a 28 and 1 from a 23 is a 74. And again, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs on how I'm figuring that out. And then we have our 65 as our late pace rating, which kind of makes sense because this horse is an early runner, E8. So you're going to see figures are going to be a little bit lower down here. All right, so there's the 1 finished, and we got to go to the 2. Now, what I'm going to do when I'm done this 2, I'm going to pause. I'm going to do a few more, and when I get down to the tail end of this, I'm going to turn it back on so you can see a few more done, instead of having to sit through here and watch the entire race me and handicap it. Again, the purpose of me doing this right now is to maybe clear something up that you may be doing at home that you might say, well, wait a second, I didn't do this wrong. As I said, the sprint 44 and the 46 route at least justifies a bit to me. It makes me feel better that I'm not using the same exact standards and coming up with skewed numbers when it comes to sprints and routes. Kind of evens the playing field a bit. Okay, number 3, I'm looking for something. I don't want to use this minus 11, minus 8 unless I have to. And I don't. So we have another E8. And I can make a mental note here. We have 2 E8s in this race so far. So we may be looking at a fast pace. So as I'm looking at my other horses, here's another E down here, E5. So as I'm looking at my other runners, I may want to pull pace lines that are on the slower end, race shape-wise, with the minuses. Okay? And stick to the positives with the E horses, because you know they're going to go out. That's where they want to be. They want to be out in front early. So maybe keep the positives with the E horses. And then for my P runners and my sustain runners, there's another E8. This is going to be a very fast pace, this race. So this P4, I may want to look at something that's going to be, again, on the positive side. I think I said negative side before. But at least I know now, how do these off-the-pace runners run against a fast pace? Now, I'm not saying we have to use a plus 10 and a plus 12 and something that high. But I would just, based on what I'm looking at here, my E's, I would want to stick with positives. So let's go to the 3 horse, and we'll just do that one together. And then I'll finish it off on my own. And we don't want to use this. Minus 11, minus 8. My hands are tied, so I don't want to reach back too far for the first pace line. Let's go. But I have some room to work here. I mean, we're talking May here. We're only talking a couple months away. Let's go down and let's use this May as our first pace line. Okay, it does reflect his running style. It is on the fast side and not the slow side. I don't want to use plus 12, plus 14, even though this race may be that fast. I just don't know if I'm going to find races that fast for my other runners. So I want to keep this again. I want to keep the playing field as level as I possibly can. And let's use that plus 1, plus 2. Now, that was at a mile 16th. It's still a 2-turn route. We're going to go with the 48 and 3 off of 46 is an 87. A 113 and 4 off of 110 is an 81. 86, 88. Hopefully you guys are following without me having to use the cursor here. A 1 and a 2. A target rating. 19. He was in the lead. He won the race, right? So I can just go off of 110, 15. That's an 81 target rating. My final fraction for a mile 16th on the dirt, I use a 28. So here we have 113 and 4 to a 147 4. We're looking at a 34. So off of a 28, that's 6 seconds. That's a 30. That's a 70. 70 raw rating. Late pace was 84. Okay, so we have that horse finished. I'm sorry, we have the... Did I do that in the wrong column? All right, I did that in the wrong column. I didn't do my second pace line. I'm sorry. But at least you guys have an opportunity to see, again, what I'm doing here. And this is very simple. I could just copy this and paste it right into first pace line for... And then I want to go back and I want to dig a pace line for... Another pace line for the 2 horse. So let's reach back. For the second pace line, I'm not that concerned about going back here. Long as it wasn't in too early in 23 or 2022. And I want to find something, if I can, to match the +8, +3. I want to stay away from the turf, if I can, which I'm going to. And again, being that I'm projecting this race to be a fast pace, I'm not going to try and even this out. +8, +3, -7. This would have been a perfect race to use if I could not project the pace in this race. Okay? If I thought the race was going to be, you know, moderate pace or something that was difficult to project, I would try to balance it out. But I'm going to stick with the fast, and I'm going to go with my gut. And if I can find something, and I think the best I'm going to be able to find here is... Looking at this, is this 0 and 0. And I'm going to go with that. So, for the 2 horse, the second pace line is going to be 48 and 4. That's an 86. A 113 and 4 is an 81. We have a 76, 76. We have a 0, 0. Target rating in that race, 113 and 4. It's an 81. You can keep that there. We already have an 81 there. And then we have a final fraction of a 113 and 4 to a 145 is actually a 31 and 1. So off of a 28, a 31 and 1 would be an 84. And we have an 81 as a late pace for Briz. All right, so I'm going to pause here, let that absorb a little bit. And I'm going to come back with 1 horse left. We'll do this horse. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to finish the rest of them so we can take a look at the summary grid over here and see what we come up with. All right, so I'll be back shortly. All right, guys, I'm back. I finished all the runners. I ended up tossing the 7 horse, so we got 6 horses to look at here. Based on the summary grid, and before we even look at the summary grid, some things you can make note of here in the working grid before you completely get yourself away from it is who is the projected target horse? And we have the 6 and the 5 both showing 91s. Now, the thing is, the second is actually like an ability rating. It's really not a target rating. The target rating is supposed to come off of the last race, going by the rules of the matrix system. So we have the 6 horse actually coming off of a 91 this last race. So we can make note of that if you want. Put that in the back of your mind. The other thing you might want to look at that's not looked at over here as a standalone, it's used with the final fraction, is the turn. Like who's coming up with the best turn rating. And the 6 horse has actually got the 100. So he's coming up with the best turn rating. All right. Now, he is a 5-2 morning line in the program, and he probably will go off as the favorite. But this grid here, after we get done looking at it, is really pointing me to a single, probably, if I do play a pick 4 tomorrow, depending on what the other races look like, race 2, 3, and 4. and I decide, whether I want to play it. And let's take a look at the 6 real fast. First of all, as you can see here, the 1 horse, based on this grid, looks like it may be the speed of the speed. As we noted before, there are 3 horses that are E8s that look like they're going to want to go out to the lead, the 5 being one of them, and I think the 4 was the other one. But the grid's telling me right now that, especially when you take into account the race shape, I didn't even go and identify a second, third because they're so far behind the 90.5. And then when I look at the actual past performances, and I see that 1 horse, and I realize the 1 is the one coming off of the 6 furlong race, but we also are looking at a mile here at a 47.1, and we're looking at a 46.3 for a mile 70, and these other E runners do not show something better than a 46.3. Here's the other one. There's an E5. No 46.3. And then we have the other E8. No 46.3. We have a 46.1 back here. And that was a sprint. And we have a 46.4. So we may, the 1 horse, the one and the 5, as shown on the grid, are probably the 2 that are going to battle for the lead. And that other early runner, I think it was the 3 or the 4, may have to kind of take a back seat and see how he can run a little bit off the pace. All right, so again, keeping all that information in mind, I'm going to look for who is dominating in these categories over here, and also can at least put itself in a good position to strike and use that speed. Well, we're looking at the 6 and we're looking at the 3 here. Okay, so now it's not all about who's showing up with most color. Okay, the 1 horse is showing up across the board in color, but at the same time, we talked about that speed duel, the projected speed duel. We have an 89 in the EA, and we have an 84 here, which is 4 lengths off of the top, which is the 88, which tells me this 6 horse may be in good striking position come the turn. And then, as you can see, he has the best turn and the best finish. So this 6 horse is going to be my top play in this race, and I'm going to put him as a single A. And again, not that it matters. My A's and B's, I always look at them when it comes to value. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, in case this is just an extremely fast race, I'm going to put the 1 as a B, but I'm also going to put the 3 horse as a B too, or the 2, but I'm going to put the 2 in the C category simply because he's not showing up in the summative factors over here. So I'm going to go 1. My keyboard again, 1 and 3 for my B selections. There we go. And then I'm going to go with the 2 as a C selection. So there's only, I eliminated the 7. I'm looking at 6 horses. I'm not going to go 5 deep here. I'm going to go with these 4. And if I end up playing a pick 4, I'm going to single the 6. And if I end up playing a try, I'm going to, put the 6 on top of the 1, 2, 3, maybe over top of all for the 3rd leg, which for 50 cents is only going to be about a $5 play. And then maybe do a backup play in case this 6 doesn't run, and maybe put the 2 or the 3 on top. But I'm not going to use the 1 on top. Again, simply because of what the race shape, the shape of the pace looks like to me. All right, so I will be posting these races on the slide presentation. And let me pull that up real fast. And all you got to do is hit the slideshow button, and it will give you a closer look at the slide that you're actually on at the time. And I think I need to do a closeout on my Chrome because everything's working slowly now. I got so many things open up. All right, but so I'll put the link to this presentation in the description. You might have to search a little bit in the description, but it'll be in there for those that tomorrow want to follow along and see how these grids do at Penn National. Okay? Little long video, but I kind of knew it was going to be. And thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon.